On this episode of the Nerd Note, cutting recurring technology expenses. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerd Note. I am your host, Jason Garcia, and with me, as always, the Shaggy to my Scooby, Matt Enderly. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm well.
Good. Good. Can't complain. It's early morning today.
Wait, I'm Shaggy?
You're Shaggy.
I'm fine with that.
I'm Scooby.
I'm fine with that.
Yep. So it's early morning for us here. This is usually we do our podcast in the afternoon, but because of scheduling conflicts, we are doing it bright and early, so no cocktail hour for us today. But we do have a special guest. Our guest today is Matt Baker, Systems Administrator with MAXtech Agency. How you doing today, Matt?
I am well, thank you.
Good. I know you're a little nervous about this, but we'll get through this. I promise.
See my sweaty
If
palms?
you put an IT person on camera and slung him out on the internet, it makes them feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, because they're
Okay.
not behind a computer.
Yeah. It's a personality thing.
no.
That's all right. Matt's a good sport about it.
Absolutely. Also, before we get started on the topic of cutting technology expenses, I do want to say, guys, thank you so much for subscribing to our show. If you can't see that little box there, we are over 1,000 subs, so that was a big deal for us here at the Nerd Note. So I want to thank you, Matt. I want to thank our producer, Jonathan Miles. You guys never get to see
Yet.
but
coming.
it's been a lot of hard work and coming up with topics and guests and all that. So I just want to thank you guys for subbing. And if you haven't subbed yet, please do. There's going to be a lot of great content coming out through the rest of the year. So
On that note, just real quick, at some point we should do a demo of that LaMetric clock. Because for all of our digital marketing clients, it shows your social media likes, and it's also customizable. So as the Nerd Note, maybe we have like a gadget corner.
LaMetric, you can't spell that.
No, I think it's French.
Yes,
And so I don't know
Greek.
French. It's some other language.
Greek to me.
But it's super cool, and they're not cheap. I mean, 170 some bucks on Amazon, but really cool gadget.
Yeah.
Not just for us, what we're using it for, but it can tie into CRM systems and show you opportunities. So, and as the Nerd Note, maybe we have like a little gadget corner and
Tech Day.
yeah, just something that's useful in
Gadget
business.
day.
You know,
Yeah.
Tech
just
talk.
Yeah. So, nerds out there, get ready. This is a nerdrific podcast today. Yes. This is going to be all about IT, all about technology expenses, and helping small to medium-sized businesses in knowing the difference between that reoccurring expense and the one-time expense. So, Mr. Enderly, I'm going to kick it right off to you, and let's get this party started.
Sure. Well, so, I've had a lot of clients ask about, can we purchase one-time hardware, software, something to reduce our monthly recurring costs, right? And
Are you seeing that more within the last year and a half than
sure.
previously?
In COVID, I mean, people are concerned about outflow of money. I mean, some businesses are locked down and, there's nothing worse than paying for something monthly and your business isn't even running.
Right.
But you're concerned that you can't reduce it because you can't remove it. And so because of it storing data,
Right.
It's an integral part of something and you're not sure what the repercussions are going to be. And so hear a lot of it. I mean, we heard a lot of it in 08, 09. I mean, anytime there's economy kind of shaking, people want to know how can we reduce our monthly costs. And in most cases, it's not that they need to, it's that they're exploring that option. And so the question becomes, what can they invest into? And it could be large. For example, we'll go through a couple of things, but in software, Office 365, are you able to buy it instead of paying monthly? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like and what do you lose?
Okay. So speaking of the 365, the world knows Facebook went out. What was it, Monday? Was that Monday? For about 6 hours, right? And there was some businesses that probably had some effect with advertising and whatnot. But for you nerds, what would happen if Office 365 went out and the email and all that? What would be the ramifications of that?
Well, real quick, does anyone know what the current user base of 365, not just the Office suite, but the hosted email? How many, I would have to assume several million?
Yeah.
Matt's going to Google it. But yeah, it's one thing for social media to go down. And in our world, it's not that impactful, although our marketing clients were impacted.
Sure.
To me, I would anticipate the biggest impact from that would be the e-com that heavily relies on Facebook ads to generate sales. And more specifically companies with low margin products. So if I sell something for $100 and only make $1, I need to make that up in volume.
Right.
And if my volume is produced through Facebook ads and they were down for our Eastern time, the bulk of the day, of the business day, what impact did that have? And that could be greater for them than obviously in our world. So I think it depends on who you are as a customer. But if 365 went down, now we're talking about a different audience.
Right.
Okay, now we're talking about a bigger net. Most businesses, if not all, need email. And so, did you find it?
Yeah. So as of June 2021, over 731,000 companies in the United States alone are using
731,000.
over 1 million companies worldwide.
Okay, so 1 million companies. And that's not 1 million email accounts. That's 1
That's
million
companies.
companies. And some of those could be large enterprise.
Right.
So you're probably, I mean, what would you say?
5 to 10 million.
Yeah, I would say 5 million. And so a 6-hour outage of email would be
Catastrophic.
Catastrophic.
Yeah, and I think the biggest impact of Facebook going out was FOMO. I mean, let's be honest. It was, fear of missing out. People were really that was it. The second one then was the e-commerce businesses, but it was FOMO.
I didn't even notice.
I didn't care.
No.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people commenting. I mean, I know that's a little bit off, but I know a lot of people commented that they wish it would have stayed off.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, so that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. All right. Let's get back to the topic of cutting technology expenses. So
Let's go through a couple that offer both perpetual licensing. Perpetual licensing is one time you own it versus the monthly. And Matt will kind of go over some of these with you. You know more about some of these than I do. Adobe Creative Cloud, Office 365, apps for business, cloud servers, and cloud backups. So, I mean, are you an avid user of Adobe?
Yes. Yeah, for the most part.
Are you on Creative Cloud?
No.
Okay, so I think the economics, and don't quote me on this, last I thought I heard it was about $600 a year or $52 a month for Adobe Creative Cloud. Now, there are different packages, so depending on how much you have,
Right.
but if you have the all-encompassing, then I think it's around $52 a month. So $52 a month, you have the perpetual license,
Yeah.
and do you know the ballpark of that on pricing?
Gosh, I think I paid like $1,600 for the suite that I have.
Let's look. Let's see. They don't sell it now?
No.
Okay, so you can't buy that perpetual.
No. I don't think you
Okay.
can buy. I don't think you can buy it.
Okay, so there's Adobe, Office 365, apps for business. So this would be your Outlook, your Word, your PowerPoint, and your Excel. Which, a lot of people tell me, a lot of our clients, that hasn't changed much. Those applications haven't changed much.
No.
The cosmetics look a little different. There may be some little details that are better. Status now. So if you go to type an email, and it will tell you their status. So it's a little bit better. But really what's changed at its core. Emails still come in, folders are there. For the most part, it's still there. So they just are getting ready to release Office 2021. It's not out yet. Mac and Windows. And previously on Mac, you had to have the monthly subscription.
right.
$825 a month a user. I know I pay it. And they're going to add the perpetual. As of now, they're going to add a perpetual license for Mac. So you can buy it roughly $200. And it's also by device. So that's where you got to be very cognizant of that. Because if you have 5 devices, now you're paying $1,000.
Yeah.
And now that $825 is a better deal.
Right.
Okay, so depending on the number of devices. By the way, in your organization, you can mix and match. So
Yeah.
if you have people with 3 devices and you want to go 365, now not your email, just the apps. The apps themselves.
Okay.
Which you can get the apps and not do the email. You can get the email and not get the apps.
Yeah.
Anyways, if you look at the cost by device, so most our clients tend to skip a version of Office. So people that are on 16 skipped 19, and they'll probably upgrade to their 2021.
And that's what I did.
Most people do that. It's just too expensive otherwise. Now, if you're on 365, you get every version. So that is one of the benefits of 365 apps for business.
What is the cost? Like if you were to upgrade to every version from 16 to 19 to 21?
It's about $200 a device. So if you have one computer, it's $199.
Right, but once you start getting to 10, 20, 30, it gets real pricey. Okay.
But now that's per user. So let's take an office of 10. For $2,000, those computers are now covered.
Okay.
Now, so 2,000, and if you skip a version, usually the cycles are every 3 years. So if you skip one, you're 10,000 for 6 years. Okay, so if you break that down monthly, let's do that.
And are the changes that drastic?
It's usually just the user interface.
So there's really no.
They make it prettier each time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know because, again, some FOMO probably for some people. Probably some people just do it because they don't want to be missing out on something.
Well, and it's a compatibility thing too. Sometimes, like when they introduced the X to the end of the extensions, older versions couldn't read the newest documents.
Okay.
Without a plugin. There was a plugin to the older versions that made it compatible.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there was a different file format. It was a little more efficient.
And then what's the cost of 365 so that you...
$825 a month. So I just did some rough numbers. If you had 10 computers and you bought Office for $199, and I think you can find the internet and get a little bit less, but let's go with $199.
Yeah.
Your $2,000 rough numbers. If you do that every 6 years, skipping one major version, you're $27 a month for all 10, or $2.70 a month per employee or per device.
Okay.
Versus $825. Now that's on a scale of 10 employees. How about 100 and how about 1,000?
Right.
Now we're starting to see some cost savings to get the perpetual.
Right.
You lose some things with that. To Matt's point, administration is a little bit more difficult because now you have a key for every one of those devices that you need to audit and maintain and keep organized. Outside of organization, it really is not much different.
Yeah.
And you see it more than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, would you rather, if you had client A had 10 computers on 365 and client B had 10 computers on a perpetual license, if the keys were organized and a computer at either one broke,
yeah, if they're organized,
if the product keys are organized, and our old way to do that was simply tape it to the box.
Yeah.
I mean, just tape
or the back
product
of the
key.
Back of the CD sleeve.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did it per computer. That way, if that computer crashed, you had the key right there. Now, there's also something to keep in mind. I'm glad that kind of showed up. If your computer dies, that's an OEM license for that $199, which means if your computer dies, that license goes with it. It is dead. So if you buy a new computer, you have to buy a new license. Whereas with 365, it doesn't matter the device. So computer dies, you buy a new computer, you install 365, you're back in business, there's no added cost. So if you tend to keep your computers for a long period of time, then 365 may be cheaper. You just kind of have to do a cost analysis. I do these cost analysis all the time for our clients.
Do you prefer one way versus another for clients, or is it basically by size, by budget, by...
I think it's cost. I mean, simply to me, your 365, a lot of people associate it with always on. Well, they associate Facebook with always on. Yeah. And we found out that's not the case. And by the way, everyone's talking about how Facebook's down. In the data center world, we measure an uptime based on how many nines. So if you say I'm 5 nines, you're 99.999. So total 9 is uptime. Out of 365 days, 24 hours.
Right.
6 hours outage in what I hear the last outage was in 2012.
08 was the last major outage.
Okay, so 13 years and 6 hours. Their uptimes is probably still 10 or 12 nines.
Right.
So in IT space, it's still okay.
Right.
Now I understand it's a big platform, but anyways, depending on what you're trying to do, it's purely cost because to me it's licensing.
Sure.
Excel is Excel. If you're on 365 and create an Excel spreadsheet and you're on a perpetual and you send him that spreadsheet, 100% compatibility.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
So to me, it's purely cost. It's not, oh, well, I'm gaining something out of this Microsoft ecosystem because you really aren't.
Okay. All right. So in the world of subscription versus one time, it's basically just fit to suit. Correct?
Yeah. Sure.
Is there any outside of Microsoft 365? Is there any benefit to having more subscriptions than than monthly costs. Do you understand that? Did
Well,
I
I
frame
think
that question correct?
I think the goal of some of the people right now we're seeing is they're wanting to cut monthly costs. And so the question is, most people are probably thinking they would like to cut costs.
Right.
What is the repercussion of cutting it? And I think there's some concern around that, right? It's like you put it in the cloud, you don't know how to get it out. And so what's going to happen if you get it out?
Right.
And so, that goes with cloud servers, that goes with cloud backups. I mean, let's say, let's move on off 365. Let's go to the cloud backups, for example. You have a server somewhere, and by the way, you may need to back up your Office 365.
Right.
Because if Matt has 365 and he stores an email, which we all have way too much email, if he deletes it by accident, Microsoft can't restore it. Now, if Microsoft crashes, they have a backup.
Sure.
But if he makes an accident at the user level, they cannot restore it. So you may need to do a cloud backup. That cloud backup can be wherever you want, but if you put it in the cloud, you're going to have more costs.
Okay.
So now there's additional things you need to have a full backup of what you have.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The cloud became a very big thing within the last, let's call it 5 years. Aren't you seeing more people wanting to now leave the cloud, or are you seeing more people wanting to still get into the cloud?
Personally, I'm seeing a lot more people moving into the cloud because of the fact that you have to maintain whatever it's sitting on at your home or your business.
The hardware. They want the hardware gone.
And you kind of play some devil's advocate to the cloud.
Well, I look at both sides of it, right? I mean, to me, I've been in IT for 25 years. And so the cloud to me is just a marketing word that means someone else's computer. Because we've always had data centers.
Right.
I mean, the internet was run not out of an office. It was run out of a data center. It always has been. And so you look at cloud and you look at it encompasses kind of a couple things. The server hardware that nobody wants to admin because it's expensive, it depreciates very quickly, and it breaks without notice.
Right.
And so that component people want to get rid of. But then there's also licensing. So you have the server hardware, you have licensing that you've always had to pay for, and you also have the data center resources. So it's now redundant air conditioning, redundant internet, redundant power,
right.
The generators, the batteries. And so I break those three apart because you can have your own licensing on your own server in a data center if you want those gains, if you want those redundancies. And so I don't say, a lot of times the cloud in our small business, medium business is our client, and they look at cloud as the guy on the white horse who's going to give them everything, and
Sure.
they don't have to worry anymore. It's
Right.
just done. It's easy.
And we mindlessly, in our personal lives, just send things to the cloud.
And we did, and now the cost is climbing,
Right.
and the rate at which the costs are climbing. So Microsoft released their pricing starting March of 2022, and it's about a 30% bump. And so the costs are climbing. And so I think we saw a massive, in our space, enterprises were always in data centers. So in theory, they were already in the cloud, their own cloud.
Right.
Small, medium business are saying, yeah, they've finally swallowed the pill that it was going to cost them a little bit more to not have the server. They waited till their servers died and they moved, or they got their use out of the servers and then they moved. And now I'm seeing more of a hybrid. It's like, okay, now I want to be in the cloud because I enjoy the benefits and redundancies of a data center. However, I don't want to be dependent on it.
Sure.
And so now how do I keep a local backup? How do I keep certain things that if that were, Microsoft's not going away. We don't have to worry that we're going to wake up one morning and Microsoft's gone.
Right.
Adobe's gone.
Yeah.
But we are going to be worrying about, the data integrity. For example, if you're on 365 and they had an issue, which we thought wasn't possible until Monday.
Right.
They had an issue and they rolled back their data. They don't tell you. You may be missing emails a gap 6 months ago. Is that a problem or not? Is that data, and it's organization dependent. It's
Right.
based. You may say, nah, man, once I read my email, I deal with it, it's pretty much gone anyways. Some people say, no, it's a litigation hold, and I have to maintain by law through compliance all my email, and so how can I ensure that's never going to happen?
Okay.
Same with Adobe. And we talked about you guys' iPhones, and I think you said you had, 12,000 pictures stored in iCloud?
Yeah.
You wouldn't know if 20 of them were gone.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that these guys randomly delete data.
Right.
I'm suggesting that you have no way to prove they did or didn't.
Right.
And so there's a control component to the cloud that you're giving away, and if you're okay with that, then you're fine.
So what's fail-safe?
You have data in two different spots.
Yeah.
You there's a 3-2-1 backup. 3 copies of your data, 2 locations, and one's air gapped. If it's always at a data center, it's not air gapped. Air gapped is very important. It's offline. It's gapped by air. So you have a hard drive, you have a NAS, you have something that is air gapped storing that data.
What is a NAS?
Well, you take that one, Matt.
The acronym stands for network attached storage. So basically, like a hard drive that's connected to your network that you can store things on. And
When would someone use one of those?
well, for instance, we're talking about backups and cloud backups. A lot of them offer plugins or applications that will allow you to back up your cloud instances.
So Is this
So like your iCloud. You could have this NAS and it would back up your iCloud?
365, Google.
Yeah.
They have applications that will allow you to actually pull hard copies of your data from the cloud to your local NAS.
What is the cost of a NAS?
So they range on capacity.
Okay.
But let's also back up for 1 second. That's not going to reduce your costs. That's just going to give you.
That's just security.
That's
Yeah.
just having your
Yes.
offline. And
Yeah,
I was
absolutely.
walking through Best Buy a year ago, and they sell a little device. I don't remember the name. Maybe Jonathan can find it and stick a link in there. And it backs up. I don't know if it's real time, but automatically your social media accounts. So if your photo albums are your social media, Monday might have scared you for a minute.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you post from your phone wherever you are. This thing sits at your house. You post the picture, it grabs it. So now you've got the picture stored at home as well. I don't know if it had a subscription. I'm assuming there probably is.
Yeah.
I don't recall the price being too heavy. A little box. It wasn't anything crazy, but it just gives you some safe of mind that you have it there. Once you start looking at, because I'm cloud, I need another cloud because I don't want to rely on one. When you start looking at those costs, they can climb pretty quickly.
Yeah, the redundancy is mind-boggling. I mean, where does
It's 2 of everything.
how,
Yeah.
is this hard drive large? Is it
So we have one. So let's go through a use case. We have a NAS here for our podcast. Okay, and that's because our podcast video files are too big for us to be sending them to the internet and trying to edit them off of the internet.
Sure.
So you need to keep them local and work on them. Then that stores here because the files are so large. And then every night that replicates up to the cloud into a cheaper archive storage. So there's different levels of cloud storage as well, depending on how quick you want the speed access to them and so forth. We're storing them in a very low cost place called Wasabi.
okay?
So we're shipping them off at night when we don't need our internet here because we aren't here. We're shipping them off. So we have a backup to the NAS if the NAS would die, but we keep it here because of the speed in which Jonathan can grab, all the
Files
data,
and data
all
and
the
stuff.
files.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's a lot of different uses, but what he's saying is it can integrate directly with the cloud and grab your data and ship your data in different directions.
So talk to me a little bit about what are some of the pros and cons of the subscription software versus perpetual licensing?
Oh, we touched on that a little bit earlier. It's the cost of, perpetual. You buy it once, and it's an upfront cost.
And they typically, cut you some dollars off on that. Like most, no,
Probably not.
No. Usually like they're like,
no.
oh, if you pay for the whole year, you'll save $10 or
Well,
whatever.
it's not a subscription; it's forever.
Right.
Yeah, it's
So
one-time purchase.
and I've never seen of any bulk, like discount pricing.
No.
I've never seen if you buy
Nope.
10,000 copies of Office. I've never seen it. Now maybe it happens through
bananas.
different channels, but
Yeah, not from Microsoft. No.
But talk a little bit about like the updates. I mean, in all software you get minor updates, security updates, most
Sure.
cases. But
Sure.
what about major version upgrades?
Well, I think that's the distinction. When you have a subscription, everything that is in that cost of that subscription is all. It's your servers. It's the people that maintain those servers. It's all of those things. Updates are all included. If it's a perpetual situation, you have all of those things that you have to look out for fiscally. You have to make sure that you have servers to host all these things. You have to have people to maintain them, ISPs, power, all that stuff. Everything that goes along with hosting something internally.
For you personally, as a tech that's out there in the field doing the work, do you have a preference of systems you're working on, perpetual versus the monthly costs? Is there benefits or negatives for you?
A convenience factor?
Convenience factor, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, subscription nine times out of 10 is easier. You don't have to deal with file paths, trying to figure out where this piece of software is supposed to point to, blah, blah, all that stuff. It's just in the cloud. It's there. All you're dealing with at that point are user accounts. So it takes...
What he's saying is there's an administration panel. Okay, so like save an office of 10. Mm-hmm. The IT admin is going to have an admin log into that tenant. And they're going to be able to add users, remove users, manipulate the licensing, all those things in one shot. We call it one single pane of glass. Mm-hmm. And whereas if it's OEM license, every software for every device has a different key that no one seems to organize very well.
Sure.
And so he goes out to resolve a ticket, a trouble ticket. The person's urgent. They can't work. And now he has to go hunting, pecking for a product key.
Whose responsibility is it to house those product keys?
It's always the end user. We assist.
Okay.
We do assist.
Sure.
But ultimately, we don't want to be the keeper of all their keys because we want to maintain portability.
Sure.
We don't believe in holding any client hostage. So those licenses are their licenses, and they may get audited from Microsoft. And where are we? And so we always make sure they have, and we'll tell them we deliver a server or something. Look, these are keys. You need to store these somewhere safe. They need to be kept. Oftentimes we keep copies.
Sure.
But if you're a managed service client, then we do.
Where would they keep the keys? Like, give me an example of so that our listeners, if they're like, well, shoot, I don't. We have our keys, but are we keeping them in a secure place? Do they need to be? Where's a smart place to?
I mean, a lot of our clients have safes in their office. I mean, they put them in the safe. They scan them, keep a digital copy as well.
Sure.
Safety deposit box. I mean, wherever you want to keep your life insurance policy.
Sure.
Wherever you want to keep. I mean, it's an important document of the business.
Sure.
And so wherever you would store those things is where you'd want to store those. Now,
because I'm sure some of the folks out there might be thinking that this is an electronic key, right? Now we're talking about this as a physical.
It's both.
Well, it's both.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Both.
So, but does everyone know that? So that's why I
Right.
wanted to say, and you said safe. So now we have a physical object. We're talking about technology that's all, yes, it's hardware, it's laptops and things like that. But now we have something physical that we need to keep in a safe, fire safe box, whatever it might be.
which in the cloud, what he's talking about, you don't need that.
Right.
You pay monthly, and that gives you that month.
Right.
Right.
And that's that.
And you can't lose it.
Right. The other instance I can see where, because I don't really have a preference, right? I mean, you license it the way the most cost effective and the needs requirement of the client. And let's use a type of a client. Let's go talk about a CPA. They typically staff up in season and they don't off season.
Right.
If they bought perpetual license, well, they have to buy them, and we're doing a evenly month, breakdown cost. Well, if they do 365, you would license up in your peak and shut them off in your low time.
Right.
So it gives you that monthly incremental
Flexibility.
flexibility of going up and down, and the same with the cloud server. You buy a server that's got some number. Let's just call it 100 terabytes, and you use it. Well, we say, well, you're going to get 6 years out of your server. Well, if you have substantial growth, you won't.
Right.
Additionally, if you contract your business and you don't need that much space, we can downsize a cloud server. You bought that server. So let's say you bought a server for 10 grand and you did a lease. You're paying that same monthly price now throughout that whole lease.
Right.
And so if you don't need that much horsepower, you can't downsize it to save those costs. So sometimes cloud models can save you money on a monthly basis if you go down in size.
Right. If you're a seasonal business.
Yeah, seasonal, or you're growing, or you're contracting, any one of those situations, cloud may be better. Now, with that said, there's also another component. If the cloud server costs you $500 a month, but the lease on the server's $180, then even if you contract your cloud server, you may not get lower than $180 anyways.
Right.
So it really comes down to every case. And so that's why I think it's so important. A lot of IT people don't really have these conversations with their clients. They just kind of, they let the client pick, and the clients aren't educated with what's going on all the time.
Right.
They got a business to run. And they don't sit down with the IT people, because the IT people, they don't really bring this to their attention and say, hey, let's back up, take a 30,000 foot view of your licensing, of your hardware, and really look at it's an interview process.
Sure.
You're saying, well, are you going to grow? Are you seasonal? There's a lot of assessment that needs to be done.
Sure.
And a lot of times it's just not, unfortunately, and then someone ends up in the wrong product. And then you've made a commitment.
Right.
Because it's expensive migrating into the cloud. It's expensive migrating out of the cloud.
Right. So what do we want our message to be today as we finish this episode? What do we want to end for our nerds out there? What do we want to tell them?
Always assume there's a cost.
Always assume there's a cost.
And they're rising. I mean, higher than inflation rates.
Sure.
I would tell people this. Don't just go with the flow. Sit down.
Yeah.
Take the time. You don't need to do it often. I think if you do it annually, that's probably sufficient. If they did annual costs, which, if you have an MSP, it would be your virtual CIO that you would have these conversations with. They're looking at the business side. They're looking at needs versus costs versus cycles of your business and comparing all of those, working with you. And if that's not something you're getting done, you need to get that set up. You need somehow. We do it at no cost. So our clients get the benefit of it. Our new clients, we do it as part of the onboarding.
So if someone out there would like to get a free assessment from MAXtech, how can they get a hold of us?
Call Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Call Matt.
Yeah.
Matt. We're both Matt.
One of us.
Yeah,
Probably
just call the
me.
office. Just call the office.
And that office number is
614-401-401-8800. So 401-8800. And we haven't talked about our Tampa number, so we'll leave that off for another podcast.
We have MAXtechagency.com as well.
Yep.
There is live chat on there, so if you are not a phone person, you just like to get some information via chat, that is available.
And it's important too to say, I mean, we're not hard sales company here. If you want to call and ask just a couple quick questions, we don't even need to know your name.
Yeah, chances are if you do call in, you're going to be getting me, Jason Garcia, and I'll help you out the best that I can and get you the information you need. Matt Baker, I want to thank you for joining us today. You are also going to be our guest for episodes 9 and 10.
Oh,
which is
right.
What?
A little teaser will be a 2-episode podcast, one topic, and that topic's going to be ransomware protection for your business. So obviously, the hackers are alive and well, and they are juiced up on Monster, and they are just
I think he's insinuating.
they are going after anybody and everybody. We've seen it firsthand as a company.
Yeah.
Not to us, but we've been involved with clients.
Yes, we've seen clients that are associated with us and not associated with us have run into difficulties. So I just spoke to a lady yesterday who a hosting client who had her site hacked, and it's in small business out of Minnesota, one man band. So they don't care how big or how small you are. They're going after you. So again, I want to thank you. We'll see you. We'll see you for the next 2 podcasts as well. Hopefully, those ones you won't be as nervous since we don't bite.
It's also like 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
So, hey, nerds, again, I want to thank you guys for subscribing. If you would like to be a guest on the show, please reach out to us at thenerdnote.com. Subscribe on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. If you have a topic you would like us to cover, please let us know. Reach out on thenerdnote.com, and we'll go from there. So, guys, I want to thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you found this beneficial. Again, if you have any questions about the free assessment, please reach out to us at 614-401-8800, and we'll see you next time, nerds.